You decide whether you want to keep the thing turned on or not. If you turn it off, then nobody knows what you're doing. If you decide that you're letting people know what all your day-to-day intentions are, and you're giving people more and more clues about how you want to live, like my son does, all you have to do is open Facebook, you'll know where he's at the moment, right? Frankly, it's his funeral. It's as simple as that. He's giving out far more information about himself. Multiple people can use it in any which way they want. It's you to control it. It's not for saying, what should a corporation do? Corporations can do what they want with it. They have, they have all kinds of algorithms they can analyze. At least, I'm taking a very practical viewpoint on it. There's very little you can do about it. You can mandate something that you can't do certain things with people. You can't target an individual and stuff like that, which is like, again, taking a fairly heavy hand and saying, I'm going to beat this down on the people. But practically speaking, how are you going to do it?
A couple more questions.
No, it's more a statement. Actually, there is more data on social media voluntarily given by people up in the cloud than what is actually being captured by Google and these other companies. The voluntary data, in fact, this is something we raised a while back in one of our IIT conferences where we had the CTO of DJ Patil, the CEO of LinkedIn, and he and Pradeep Sindhu of Juniper Networks argued is this an age issue that younger people expose the whole thing, the older people are screaming about privacy. So it is completely contradictory, but they feel that when these people grow up and come to the age when they're standing for president and then fast and they had drugs or DUI or whatever, it's common to everybody in that age group, so it probably doesn't matter at that stage.
Question is, aren't some of these things self-regulating? I mean, all those discussions that we are having, at some point in time, somebody gets information, it is unique, oh, I have information, so Amazon has information. Before you know it, every store has information, and you're inundated with questions about what you have, and you naturally start ignoring it. So, arbitrage is really what creates a problem. If one person has the information, somebody else doesn't have it. If everybody, so if the thief knows that I'm here today and not at home, and if my security company also knows I'm here and not at home, they correct themselves. Right? So in some sense, that's what I'm saying is it's not a question of more information or less. Similarly, if you're concerned about what you put on Facebook, or you should not let them know that you are having a beer. At some point, everybody knows that everybody is having beer. It doesn't matter anymore. So it goes back to the old Shannon's theory of information. It's only relevant when you have little of it. When there's a lot of it, probably becomes irrelevant and self-correcting itself.
So if I was to understand that correctly, when there is transparency, it's self-correcting, right? But until there's transparency and there's a delta in what some people know versus others, that's when, and that's part of what we've been talking about, that does the government or does a technology company or does a third, any kind of corporation know something about you that you don't know they have or others don't know that that organization has, and what impacts that has?
Even if it does, so today you don't know how the FICO score comes, but your credit score is one that's used every time. At some point people will say, I'm not going to use a FICO score, I'll go to crowdsourcing and get my money. So if something is not known, you will go to another source and it self-corrects.
It seems to me that whenever there is an intense change in any society due to technological inputs, a set equilibrium will get disturbed. Over a period of time, at a different level of technology, it settles down to the same equilibrium. Be it any of the technologies that have been invented in the 20th century has changed the society enormously. But each next generation starts with that level and then adjusts and comes to the same equilibrium over a period of time. So instead of solving these problems at a detailed level, if they are addressed at a higher levels of abstraction, then it seems to me that over a period of time, as Doc said, they will settle down at a certain level based upon the efforts by NGOs, the government, the people. That's all I think.
Oh, one quick question.
It's very nice to see that the panel, especially all the young people and men included, are talking about be the change you want to see in people. And a conference like this, I think, sheds light on these issues. And I think an aware audience is, I think, ultimately the testament to any change which needs to happen. And I think it would come from the grassroots level as opposed to a top-down. And it's very reassuring as an educator for me that these kinds of topics are being discussed. And I am very optimistic that people are aware that there would be issues of privacy and security coming up to a balance on its own level. And I do think legislation is essential, but an aware audience, I think, is essential as well. Thank you for the chance.
Hi, my name is Yella. I am Bangalore 86 batch. The panelists talked about that, as long as consumers give consent and corporate companies are collecting data, it's okay. But I'm guilty of saying I accept to so many, in every service that I've signed up on the web, right? Do you think that companies should be forced to put in simple terms and a few things, the most important things that you are accepting to when you sign up for that service? I think if something like that is done, a lot of us will be more aware of the kind of information, the kind of things that these companies are doing, and we will probably have a second thought before just hitting that I accept button blindly.
Yeah, that's a great point, and we've alluded to the Internet Bill of Rights and a few other things. So one thing I'd like to ask each panelist is if you could get two things on the Internet Bill of Rights, what would those two things be?
I agree with what the gentleman said. I mean, I think that there has to be full disclosure to consumers about how their data is going to be used in a very transparent way. And this is no different than the base regulation we have for anything. I mean, when we regulate food, or when we regulate how grocery store products, or when we regulate consumer goods, we have the expectation that consumers be as fully informed and that there's informed consent. And the government's role is really not to intervene in the private sector, but to make sure that they're providing a full information which is necessary for markets to work. And so I would definitely, as part of the so-called Internet Bill of Rights, I would definitely say that there has to be a full disclosure of information and how data is going to be used to a consumer before they're consenting to hand that data over.
For me, one of the key things that we did at my company was created a privacy policy in plain English so that anyone could understand it and read it and not have legalese. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't speak the language of the law, and it feels good to read where information that I'm providing to a company will be, how it will be used and where it will go. And we did that at my company. It's been hugely successful amongst our users that really appreciate it. And then also just a privacy report that says, this is what we've done with your information chronologically, so they know every time they've provided a new data point, where that data has gone and how it's been shared. And that type of transparency is just very assuring to users, and they have a good experience with it. So I would love to have more plain English information on what companies are doing.
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 additional smaller points to this. I think the majority of the things covered over there. There are 2 or 3 things, right? If you go to one of my favorites, and I used to work there, full disclosure at Amazon, you'll see a lot of these little bubbles called "What's this?" They invented that whole notion of "What's this?" There's a little bubble that tells you. And I think that kind of spot disclosure on every single service is absolutely essential, because sometimes there will be all this mumbo jumbo on this thing, and then if you have a very clear little "What's this?" kind of buttons, it's actually a very simple way of doing what Dustin was just talking about. That's one part. The second thing I particularly want to include in the Bill of Rights is, I think Stan brought this up earlier in the first session. When there is a change of control from a company to something else, all bets are off. And I gave all my data to a particular company because they were going to use it in a certain way. And as long as Jeff Bezos is heading up Amazon, I'm okay with him having, my firstborn. That's a different problem. But the moment it gets transferred somewhere else, or there's a change of control, I want all my things to be and told me that, your data will not be used for anything beyond what is already being used for. And that's really important to me because all the corporations go through different philosophical leanings, and then you never know what they're going to do with the data.
I just want to add, but legally you cannot transfer that. If an entity has committed legally that they abide by certain rules, the acquirer cannot change those rules.
So very recently, WhatsApp was bought by Facebook for 19 billion. Many of you might have heard of this. And there's been a lot of dialogue about what this means for all the information that people are sharing in private communications on WhatsApp, because their privacy policy has traditionally been very different than Facebook's. And especially in the tech blogosphere, there's been a lot of conversation about, does this mean all of my private conversations will now be used by Facebook for advertising? And WhatsApp CEO has spent a lot of time talking about, we're not changing our privacy policy, continue using us, you can trust us the way you did before. And it's a challenge for WhatsApp and Facebook to continue growing, but it's also a challenge for consumers to believe it. And it goes back to the questions of trust, and it's not something that happens overnight, it happens over a period of time. And in this case, we don't know how it's going to play out, it's just, that conversation is just getting started. One last question from the audience.
Question. My name is Ram from Amridamalu. I'm Calcutta 8183. This whole notion of consent, I think, is it's almost like mother and apple pie. So let me just push back against you guys on that. And it doesn't recognize, I think, that basic nature of data. So I can give you some data now. You can get data about me from some of the sources. But what really matters is the analysis that's done of that data. And it's not just analysis capabilities now, but maybe 2-3 years from now, which you can't predict as these algorithms get more sophisticated. So the question then is, it's not consent about data now, but it's about future uses of that data. Right? So what if there's a situation where there's the likelihood that this data in the future, 5-10 years from now, could be used against you, or to identify information about you that you would not want to be known now, but yet you give this data. So where is that, what does consent mean in that sense? It's easy to say consent about this data, but are you also saying consent about future information and insights about you, the individual, that you're giving consent to?
Okay, let me take a shot at this. I think, well, first of all, you can't write laws predicting how life is going to turn out, right? You're not going to be able, for instance, there's several laws written in the 1778, 1780, which I don't think should be valid laws right now. You write laws which are going to get changed over time. So, expecting that that you're going to provide for something in the future is an unrealistic expectation in my mind. It's just not practical. I understand what you're saying. By the way, I clearly understand what you're saying. There will be new techniques by which I can gather even more insights from the data that I already have about you. But we are expecting that the benefits are going to outweigh the disadvantages at the time you're giving the data to a person, saying that my life is going to get easier at this point of time. Now, you're also going to say to the company that this can be used in a certain set of ways, because which is what they've told you they're going to use it for, and they've already said they're not going to use it for any other purpose. We're not going to sell the data, we're not going to do this. Now, if they, within the bounds of what they know, they're also saying that, but they're not also covering life, saying, it's not that Google saying, I'm getting data from you so that I can use it to predict what you're going to do, what illegal things you're going to do 20 years down the road. They're not collecting it that way either, so they don't know either. So I think from my point of view, it's very impractical to limit yourself to saying, I'm going to do only that, or I will not provide this in perpetuity, because you can't predict the future. You're getting yourself into a position where you're going to say progress will be, you're basically going to impede progress in any way, shape or form if you do that. At least that's my viewpoint.
And Ro had some thoughts.
I agree.
I agree with that. I think it's very difficult to, as long as there's a company has a restrictions on the use of that data, if they can mine new techniques to use it. It's a tough thing for me to be sympathetic to, because my entire life is on Google or something. So you know, you give up all expectation of privacy when you're on office. But my bigger concern is with the government's intervention. I mean, I'm very sensitive on the consumer side, but I think that the government's overreach is really where I have the biggest concerns.
I know there's going to be a lot of comments. This is, you know, part of the goal of this discussion was to get all of our brains activated and talk over lunch, since we have a delicious lunch right ahead of us. The last question I'm going to ask each of you, quick, might be controversial, but I think it'll be fun. Edward Snowden, do you think he did something that is, do you call him a hero, or do you call him a whistleblower and a traitor?
Hero.
I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't know. But what I would like to do is
Don't be a
verify.
politician.
Wait, say that again?
Don't be a politician.
I'm not running for office, so on that note.
You know, I don't condone what he did. I mean, having served in the administration and having had if every person started to take it in their own hands to start leaking classified information, I don't think that would be a good precedent for the nation. That said, I'm very appreciative of the byproduct of the discussion. So I don't condone Snowden. I think he should come back to the United States, face the consequences of what he did, stand up for what he did. But I'm, as a citizen, very glad that information is out there and that we're having this discussion.
Great. With that, thanks so much to every single one of you, and thanks for all the great questions.